What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about some common British words that us Americans don't understand. You know, as an American, I am shocked by how many different words you have in Britain that we just don't use here in America. It's almost like a different language at a certain point. You know, I know we both speak English, but I'm really amazed at how many different words you use in Britain, genuinely. So today, I'm excited to expand my vocabulary a bit with these 11 British words. So let's take a look.
British words Americans don't understand. The first thing on my list was sellotape. So
Sellotape? Sellotape? Is this like a type of tape? Why don't we have sellotape? This is interesting because it's like, is this a British word or is this just the name of a tape in Britain? Sellotape. Is there something special about this? It looks kind of like Scotch tape or something, like generic, that clear tape that you just tape stuff with, or... Okay, yeah, we certainly don't have this.
sellotape is a brand name. And
Okay.
sellotape is this kind of tape. You use it to like wrap a gift. That's what you use sellotape for.
Oh, it is. It's literally what we would call Scotch tape. Sellotape. Why? Man, this is exactly what I'm talking about. What a random thing to be different between America and Britain. Than like what we call our tape for wrapping gifts, like the clear generic tape. You know, when you think of tape, sellotape. Yeah, I'm thinking this is our version of Scotch tape.
Or maybe like tape a children's like piece of artwork to the fridge or something.
Okay.
That kind of tape. It's not duct tape, it's not masking tape, it's not packing tape, it's sellotape in the UK. If you asked an American for sellotape,
Okay.
no idea. We would know that you were asking for tape because we understand the word tape, but we
Yes. I've never heard of sellotape before. And frankly, if you had asked me for this before this video, I'm not sure I wouldn't have had any idea what you were talking about. I'm not even sure I would have known you were talking about tape, because it's such a strange word to me. Can I have some sellotape? I'd be like, what? Are you okay? What is this stuff?
we don't call it sellotape. We have another brand name that we use for it, which is Scotch tape.
Yes.
So
yes, exactly. It comes in this dispenser. Does your sellotape come like this in this little plastic dispenser thing, or wow, this is pretty interesting actually.
America, we would say, pass me the Scotch tape to wrap this gift,
Yeah.
not the sellotape.
Yeah.
Next on my list in
Okay.
the UK, you might say biro. You might.
Biro? Biro? I don't know why I keep saying it. Biro? Like it's gonna make sense to me if I keep saying it. No idea. I'm trying to see if by the name I can figure out what it is. Biro. Is this something you eat? It sounds tasty.
Say it. I've never said it, and I definitely feel like it's falling out of fashion because I feel like young people don't say it as much, but a lot of people do say biro, and that means ballpoint pen. So
It's a pen. No, you definitely don't want to eat biro. This is an old school name in the UK, apparently. This is like falling out of fashion. I don't know. This is a name for a pen. What we would call a ballpoint pen, or like a Bic pen, a really generic disposable pen.
we would have no idea what a biro is. We would say pen, ballpoint pen, or we have Bic as our major brand name for pens. We wouldn't say
Yep.
like pass me the Bic though. We would just call it a pen.
Biro. Yeah, you can tell by my utter confusion. Like, Never heard of that word before.
And British people do say pen as well for Americans watching.
Okay.
Don't get the impression that everyone calls it a biro, and a biro is a particular type of pen. But if you said biro in America, it would go right over our heads. Without context clues, we'd have no idea what you're talking about.
No.
The next thing on my list is Pritt stick.
Pritt stick. It sounds like mostly we're talking about maybe brand names, or I don't know, sometimes a brand name becomes synonymous with the item, like a Kleenex, or like tissue is what we say instead of like a tissue. We just say Kleenex. Like it's the word, the brand has become the word. Like some people say Coke instead of soda. Is that kind of what we're talking about? A Pritt stick? It's like a brand. This looks like a glue stick.
Stick, very common in the UK. Children use it at school to do arts and crafts projects. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you're a British person, a British viewer. My American viewers probably are getting some context clue idea of what it means.
Yeah, from the photo. Okay, if you said Pritt stick, no idea. Never heard of it. The photo looks like a glue stick.
But we wouldn't call it a Pritt stick. We would not have that could be multiple different things. We would just simply call it a glue stick.
Yeah.
Next on my list, moving.
So, basically in the UK, you seem to have some different brands, and you just call the item that brand, like the cello tape is a brand, the Pritt stick is a brand. And there's a lot of different brands, actually, that exist in the UK that I didn't know about that simply don't exist here.
Swiftly along is typically in the UK, you would call it a Stanley knife.
Really? This is interesting. This is kind of like the Pritt stick. We don't really have a brand for, well, we have Elmer's glue, but we just call it a glue stick, and not the Pritt stick. And you call this the Stanley knife, but we just call it a box opener? Really? we just call it what it literally is, I guess.
Or even sometimes you could go not brand name and you could say like utility knife, Stanley knife. In the US, it's more common to call this a box cutter. Mm-hmm. So again, we could probably figure it out in America, especially if you said like utility.
Nah, I mean, if you said Stanley knife, no one would have any idea what you're talking about. If you said utility knife, I wouldn't assume you're talking about a box opener or box cutter. That's a very specific type of knife that uses like razor blades, and I'm not convinced that we would understand no matter how much you said, you know, it's a knife for utility and Stanley. I'd just be like, oh, who's Stanley? Where is he?
Utility knife. It's not entirely different, but we would really just kind of first say box cutter. And in the UK, I notice people definitely say Stanley knife or some sort of like utility knife.
So you don't even say box cutter. That's the Stanley knife. That's what it is. Okay.
I don't hear the phrase box cutter in the UK that much.
Okay.
The next one on my list is the British use of Tipp-Ex.
Tipp-Ex. Oh, again, this is a brand. This is so funny. This is really interesting to me. So, British people, here's the question. Would you understand if I, instead of sellotape, I said like wrapping tape? Instead of, what do you call this pen again? If I said ballpoint pen, you would understand what that is, right? If I said glue stick, you'd know what I'm talking about. I don't have to say Pritt stick. You'd know what I meant by glue stick. But if you say Pritt stick, I don't know what you're talking about. But if we use our terms, I think if Americans use our terms, British people know what we're talking about, because we just kind of describe what the item is. We're like, it's a glue stick. It's a box cutter. But if you'd probably understand that, I'm guessing. But we have no chance because you're using all these brand names. It's a one-way street here, I'm noticing. Like this, the Tipp-Ex. No idea. Now that I see the photo, it's whiteout. Ooh, would British people have understood if I just said, "Oh, can I get some whiteout?" Do you use that phrase? I don't.
Tipp-Ex is a brand for correction fluid. However, in America, we would
Correction fluid. Do you use the phrase correction fluid? Like actually? And we're just savages over here. Like white out. Put the white out on a correction fluid. Sounds so much nicer.
not say correction fluid. We would also not say Tipp-Ex. We call it whiteout. So if you
Yeah.
ask for Tipp-Ex,
Huh.
that's one of those ones that, again, you need a lot of context clues to figure out what that means.
Yeah. For many of the, like, Americans have no chance here. British people, you have a chance to understand us. Maybe not whiteout, but like box cutter and ballpoint pen and tape and glue stick. Yeah, I think you have a chance to understand our words, but we have no chance.
Simply by the word alone, an American couldn't figure that out because Tipp-Ex is a brand. It doesn't actually really describe what is happening with the usage of that item. So
This is why so many of us Americans are so confused. so very confused about these British words and British culture. None of it, you can't just listen to it and understand. You need an explanation.
well, yes, in the US, Tipp-Ex would go right over our heads as well, and you would have to ask for whiteout. The next thing on my list of kind of like household items that we wouldn't understand is plaster versus Band-Aid. And
Plaster. Not a Band-Aid. It's a plaster. Wow. Yeah, Americans would have no idea what a plaster is. Actually, in America, plaster means something. It's a building material. Plaster. I think you use it to build walls, honestly.
this is an important one because America does have a specific thought that comes to our head when you ask for plaster, and
Yeah.
it is definitely not what British people think of as
It's not a little sticky pad that covers your wounds. That's not at all what it is.
a plaster. Okay, so in the UK, this thing is a plaster. So great, you can also plaster the walls, but if you're asking somebody for a plaster, this is what they're going to mean.
Oh, you can plaster walls in the UK. You also have that plaster. But what we call a Band-Aid is also a plaster. You just got to use like context clues in Britain. Okay, I mean, that's fair enough. That makes sense.
Next on my list is the word faucet in America, which is typically tap in the UK.
Oh, interesting. You know, I think this is the first one on the list that Americans might generally understand because we have the word tap water, and some people say the word tap, like can you turn off the tap? We don't say that very much, but somehow that has kind of broken into American vocabulary a little bit. And we definitely say tap water, but we say, when we're talking about the tube that the water comes out of, we definitely say faucet. But for some reason, most Americans would understand tap.
So we would talk about mixer taps in the UK, which we talk about a lot on this channel, but in the US we call them faucets. So the sink faucet or mixer faucets,
Yes.
or now I'm going to say faucet so many times it's not even going to be a word, but suffice it to say, to tap in the US is going to be like to tap something.
True. That's true. A lot of Americans, when we hear the word tap, the first thing we think of is tapping on something, physically tapping something. Like, I don't know, patting it. That's true. Maybe this wouldn't be as easy as I think for most Americans.
like this to tap your card onto a machine. We don't call these things taps, we call them faucets.
That's true, but I still think a lot of Americans would have a chance of understanding.
And another one on my list, which also has to do with brand names, is this stuff is called, you can call it a couple different things.
Dish soap? Again, I'm starting to realize how very literal we are in America. Maybe it's a good thing. So we can be universally understood. We're so misunderstood. At least you can understand our words for things. Dish soap. Soap for dishes. What else would you call it?
You could call it washing up liquid. That's the non-branded term in the
Washing up liquid?
UK.
Washing up liquid. I mean, I shouldn't argue against this. That is also a very, very literal way. That's maybe even more literal than dish soap. Somehow you found a more literal way to say it. Washing up liquid. I like that.
Or you could call it Fairy Liquid, because Fairy Liquid is the brand, but I feel like it also can be used kind of generically as
Fairy Liquid. I get it, that's the brand. If you said Fairy Liquid in America, you would genuinely get very strange looks. Do not ask people for Fairy Liquid. Don't do it. I don't know what you're going to get in return.
as well. And so if you said washing up liquid in America, the first place that we'd be confused is we don't call it washing up. We call it doing the dishes. So we could probably get what...
Oh, you don't even say doing the dishes. You don't even use that phrase. You say washing up? Like washing up the dishes or just washing up? Okay. So that phrase is also different. I didn't know that. Huh.
what you meant, but maybe not entirely there. If you said Fairy Liquid, we'd have no idea. That is not a brand we're familiar with in the US, and we call it dish soap.
Yeah.
And on the same topic of washing up or doing the dishes, there's another one, which is marigolds in the UK. Everybody knows what they are. They say
Marigolds. Extra light kitchen gloves. Kitchen gloves. Like those yellow rubber gloves you put on? What do we call those? I don't know. Again, I think we're pretty literal. We say rubber gloves. But marigolds. So it's basically the UK has a bunch of brand names that you just call that item. You call it the brand, basically. Huh.
get a pair of marigolds. There's a number of different, you can use it in a number of different phrases having to do with cleaning something, I guess. But you would just call it marigolds. And you know that you're talking about these yellow rubber gloves.
Okay.
We do not say marigolds in the US because that is not a brand we're familiar with. Again, we would just say rubber gloves.
Yeah.
Another one which is related to items you might find in the kitchen is that in the UK they say cling film, and in the US we say saran wrap.
Oh, finally, for the first time on the list, it's the reverse. In the UK, you're being very literal. Very literal. Yes, you are. Cling film. I'd have no idea what that is. Most Americans would not. So my theory that if you call something exactly what it does, cling film, it's film that clings. That my theory that would be the best, easiest way to understand something is not even true. Dang it. Because I still wouldn't know what cling film is, even though it pretty accurately describes what this does. And finally, this is something we call the brand name. Saran wrap. It's funny because now that the shoe is on the other foot, I didn't even know Saran was a brand. I just thought that was the name of this, Saran wrap. But it's actually a brand name. I don't even think about it like that. Which I'm guessing is how British people, you don't even think about these brands. To you, this is just the name of this stuff. To you, it's a It's a Pritt stick. Like, that's just what it is. It's not a brand. That's what it is.
So I think cling film is the one that makes the most sense here.
Yeah.
Because saran wrap doesn't entirely tell you what is happening like cling
No.
film does. It's kind of like a film that clings to your food to save it.
Right.
But in America, we don't say cling film. We say saran wrap.
Yeah.
Next up, also in the kitchen, is that this thing is called a tea towel in the UK. It is not
Oh.
called a tea towel in the US. It is
No.
called a dish towel.
Okay. Tea towel. I might have to go with the US here. If you're just washing dishes with this towel, it's a dish towel. Right? Is that fair? Why call it a tea towel at all? What does it have to do with tea? I beg the question.
And last on my list is probably something around the house that you'd find in a child's room, and that is a teddy. So,
A teddy. We're talking about like a stuffed animal. Or maybe that's what we would call it.
Americans do understand the word teddy.
Oh, so in the UK, you always call it a teddy. This is an interesting one. Because we say teddy bears. Yeah, we use the word teddy bear to mean a bear in particular. A stuffed bear toy. But in the UK, everything is a teddy?
Especially if you say teddy bear. Everyone knows what a teddy bear is, obviously. But in the
Yes.
UK, people tend to say teddies relating to all different types of like soft toys. So I'm kind of revealing what Americans would call them. So in America, we would call them like a plushie or soft toys or something like that. We wouldn't refer
Oh, wow. This is interesting. I'm not sure what part of the United States she's from. Because she's missing the most common word for this. The most common American word for this would be a stuffed animal. A stuffed animal. Maybe that's a regional thing. I never thought about it like that in America. I thought all Americans called them stuffed animals. I'm pretty sure. But somehow she missed that. Whatever. So the point is we call it stuffed animals, what you call teddies.
to a child's collection of various stuffed animals. We'd also say stuffed animal.
Okay, she got it. Okay, I think it just escaped her mind for a second there. Some people say stuffies. Not many people do that.
We wouldn't refer to this as their teddies. We would only specifically say that if they had like a teddy bear, and we would probably say the full thing of their teddy bear.
Wow, that's interesting. Holy cow. There's a lot of British words. and it's funny because this whole list, basically, almost the entire list here, it's words that Americans would have no chance of understanding. I can attest to that. I'd have no chance if it wasn't being explained to me right after I heard the word. No chance. So this was actually pretty fun. A lot of new British words. Not really stuff that you can use in America. Because these are actually like British brands for the most part. Really interesting, actually, to learn about this. Because I think these are pretty common words in the UK that I've genuinely never even heard of. So this is pretty fun, actually. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on any of these British words or the American words or your thoughts on that. That'd be fun to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to the UK and learning about UK culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.